I have definitely picked the wrong time for my own life. I'll be changing this, but for now, let's do it. The door is open. I am live and online, and I'll open up my windows to collect questions. And so this is office hours and ask me anything. So you are welcome to ask me absolutely any questions that you have about UX, CX, jobs, getting your work done process. I'm not looking because I'm finding all the buttons I need to click to check the live streams and the chats. So if anybody has any questions right now, I'm happy to take them. Again, this is Ask Me Anything. There is about a minute delay. So if you feel like you're asking a question and I'm not getting to it very quickly, just know that there's about a 30-second, a minute delay between when I'm speaking and when you hear it and then when you respond. So it's just a little bit funky and out of sync a little bit. But again, we're live on YouTube and on LinkedIn. And I'm welcoming questions from either absolutely anything. Hello, Udit. Thanks for joining. Still got a couple of bugs flying around. Sorry about that. Thursday is not going to be the right day for me to do these. So I know I had said mark your calendars and I'll do a Ask Me Anything office hours on Thursdays. That's not going to work. Quick story. Where I live out in the countryside, winter Thursdays is hunting day. That means hunters are allowed to go out to the local land where they've been given permission and hunt. And they go out there with guns, they go out there with packs of dogs. And we have dogs, and one dog tends to stay inside. And on hunting days, we keep her inside so she doesn't get tangled up with all of that mess with the other hunting dogs or shooting and whatever. Well, she hears the hunting dog, she smells the hunting dog, she senses them, she's barking. She is barking her head off. I'm lucky to have a quiet moment right now, but it is dog freaking out universe here. So I'm going to switch these to Tuesday, and I'm going to switch them to a different time to try to capture all the time zones in the world at once if I can. If you have a question and you know you can't catch in office hours, send me that question ahead of time and let me know you're okay with me answering it in a live format like this, and I'll make sure to answer it, and you can see the video later. But I will probably change these to Tuesdays later in the day, Europe time, probably night for India. So I will reschedule these and I will let you guys know through posts. But chances are it'll be Tuesday at about 4:30 p.m. my time, 9 p.m. for India. I think that is 10:30 a.m. for East Coast of America and probably 7:30 a.m. for West Coast of America. So a little early there, but doing my best to capture the time zones that connect with me most on LinkedIn. I know I've got some Australian and New Zealand people as well. I just can't stay awake for the whole world at the same time, but I'm doing my best. So again, we will reschedule these for Tuesdays, 4:30 p.m. for where I am. And right now I am in the home office in Italy. I'm going to change my calendar. And hopefully that will help everybody set your calendars. And if you need questions answered, let me know. I also do answer questions in Slack. So if those of you who haven't joined the Delta CX Slack workspace, you can. There is a link from the Delta CX website. I think it's on the contact page or it's also in the footer. There is a link straight into our Slack room. We've got about 50 people in there. It's not very active. It's still kind of small, but please know that I treat that as office hours as well. And you can ask me any question there anytime. And if I'm awake and on internet, I will answer it. We've got our first question. So thank you. I think you're Neil, but I'm not too sure. I don't always pronounce names right. I apologize. A quick question. Would you talk through the process you go through when defining your initial research questions when discovering whether an idea is going to have any interest? Okay. So, and then Udit has a question as well. So great. Let's walk through both of these questions today. And let's start with this one about what is my process for defining research questions when discovering when an idea is going to have any interest. So my guess from this, and you can respond to me even though I know we're offset a little bit, and please forgive the dog barking. Olivia, there's no distracting her. Her name's Olivia. What it sounds like is someone at your company has an idea. Olivia Vieni, Olivia Vieni, Olivia Vieni, Olivia. Okay, lay down. Fai kucha. Oh, vieni. Sorry, I'm going to try to distract the dog. Come here. So I'm going to talk to you while I try to pick up the dog. Sorry. So basically, it sounds like somebody at your company already has an idea of something they want to do, a product they want to build, or a feature they want to build. And it sounds like your job might be go find out if anybody wants this. Excuse me. This is Olivia, who obviously is of a hunting breed and is very excited about today, but not allowed to go. Olivia, sit nicely. I know, sit nicely. So, my concern would be that you might be under pressure to create research or questions that validate this. When, of course, the right research to do is to find out if there is, not if there's interest, but usually the approach to take is what are people's real needs? What are they doing now? What are our opportunities? I would say try to make sure your research is more, okay, it's going to be barking. Nothing I can do. Nothing I can do. That's why we're moving this to Tuesday. Make sure your research is unbiased. The point of research is not to try to tell the boss that they're right, not to try to say, okay, let's do this thing. You want to make sure it's really unbiased. So typically, to answer your question, Olivia, I would be working on research that looks at who are these people or customers that would use this? What are they doing now? What are their motivations, fears, habits? Get to know them as people. Do we have competition in this area? Let's do some competitive analyses. We might even want to run some testing where we watch people use the competitor system. I would want to do just unbiased general research about users, not to see if they're interested in this, because that's usually automatically biased. That's usually, hey, let's prove that people want this. And of course, when that's what you set out to do, you'll prove it, whether or not it was true. So normally you find out later, oh, wait a minute, nobody actually wanted this. That was all messed up. So I typically just ask very general open questions about how do you do this now? So let's assume that there's a process or something we're going to build for people, a feature, a product. What are they doing now? How do you do this now? And what's working for you and how you do this now? What's not working for you? How could this be improved? And I leave it really open. So, this thing you're doing right now, how could it be improved? How could it be better, faster, easier, cheaper? In some way better for you and what you need. Again, quickly, this is open office hours and ask me anything. So I'm taking questions. I've got another one lined up after this, but right now we're answering Neil. Is that how you say that? I'm so sorry. Maybe give me a phonetic pronunciation. So ultimately, I would determine product direction, or if there's interest in something, by being able to come back with good research, with quotes, with video clips, and say, wow, customers really are having a problem in this area. This is an unmet need. It's a need that we could meet. And so let's look at going in this general direction with this product, and maybe continued research gives us a little bit more about how it should go, because remember, there's ideas and there's the execution of ideas. We got lots of ideas. Dating website. Okay, that's an idea. But how you execute on that is what makes all of the sites different. So remember, don't just assume that an idea is good and run with that. There's so many ways it can be executed, and that's where great CX and UX have to come back in as well for their research, architecture, design, testing, pronounced like the river. Nile. Okay, thank you so much, Nile. I'm so sorry I gave you an American pronunciation there. I gave you the Neil Diamond. Nile. Okay, I was in denial. So see, I'm about a half a minute ahead of you. So that's some of the direction that I would go in, but follow up on your question. Let me know if I'm going in the right direction for what you were asking. That way I know if you have like a follow-up question, or if there's something you were hoping I would cover that I didn't cover, let me know, and I will swing back to your question. As usual, this show has no sponsors. I like Hipster Mickey, and this is a delicious peach lemonade. Back at you, Horns. All right, let's take a look at Udit's question while we see if Niall has a follow-up. Imagine we have three different UIs and we want to know which one is best. What would we do? In terms of UX research, is there any process? So, Udit, it sounds like you're talking about a possible ABC test where you have three different things and we want to know which one is going to be best for the customer. So, typically, what I would do, whether these are UX executions or UI visual designs, I would want to typically I do UX prototyping in Axure, but you can prototype however works for you. Very often, when people are thinking about UIs, they are thinking about finalized visual design. So sometimes sketchy paper won't work. So you might want to do a real prototype where people get to walk through processes. Because remember, we don't just want to hold up a UI to someone and go, which ones do you like? You can do stuff like that, but I think we can do better. And I think, especially if this UI is not just a screen or a set of visual components, if it really is a process or a feature or some part of our product, then we can't just hold it up and go, which ones do you like? So I would probably be doing a fast UX prototype in Axure of each of these. Then I would do some sort of ABC test, and to do that, you would create tasks for people. So let's assume that this is an experience where someone gets to check out. Let's just pretend it's a new checkout. Okay, so we tell people, you've put stuff in your cart, you're looking to check out. Here's a fake credit card number you can use. Do the checkout, and you're not going to buy anything. This is just a prototype, and let's speak out loud, see how it goes. And then you could do that as an unmoderated test. Like right now, I'm putting my unmoderated tests on Userlytics. They don't pay me to say that. We are not sponsored. I just happen to be a happy paying customer of Userlytics. So, but obviously, they have a lot of competitors as well. So you can pick anybody that works for you. But at least then I get back videos of people using my prototypes. And we have one out there right now. We actually do have an A and a B that we're testing right now for a client who has an e-commerce website. And we are testing an idea where they mess with the quantity of their order through a slider versus the quantity through typing it in a text box. And so we're trying to see which one works better for these types of customers on this type of site. Some people might say, oh, it's a quantity, always have a text box. Oh, it's a quantity, always have a slider or whatever. We're trying both to see which ones make more sense. And so far, we found everyone's ignoring the slider and typing right into the text box, which is funny because the slider is right under it. Now, that doesn't mean a slider is and see what works for them. So I would be running probably a now I say A/B test or ABC test, but when I think about those, I guess in this case I'm not thinking about releasing it to the public and then testing it against each other, because as much as possible we don't want our paying customers to be guinea pigs. We don't want paying customers to be struggling through different variations of our stuff. So, and we don't want to surprise people with changes to the real released product. So I tend to do these tests in a UX environment, and I tend to do them with prototyping and a user testing tool. And that way we're not unleashing this on the public. I would say pick your A, B, and C, do those behind the scenes. And that way you can then see which one is working best and consider developing that one and releasing that one to the public if it seems ready to go, or again, after more UX work. So, Udit, let me know if that covers what you were looking to ask. Ask any follow up questions you might have. This is Ask Me Anything and Office Hours, which for those of you just joining, I will be moving to Tuesdays. Watch LinkedIn for a notice about that. Thursdays is not going to work when Thursdays is dog freak out day. So we're going to move these to Tuesdays, 4:30 p.m. Central Europe time, 9 p.m. India, 3:30 p.m. UK, 10:30 a.m. East Coast USA, and I think 7:30 a.m. West Coast USA. Niall says, that's great, and feel that the courses I do miss that critical aspect. You're totally right. It's really important to think about that testing more strategically, and to remember that a lot of our role at companies is not order taking. It is not to just give stakeholders what they asked for to make them happy. It is not to um it's not to validate everybody and tell them they have great ideas. And you know, if you read my book, which I'm a little bit biased about, plug Deb's book, Delta CX. Read it when Christmas dinner goes all wrong and you're looking for some alone time. Available on Amazon. I have a section in the book where I interview a data scientist, and I say, you know, I really wish we had a data scientist in the UX department, because there's so much stuff that I wish you were doing and chasing down and analyzing and creating models and algorithms for and stuff. And so I asked her, what is the worst way that we can use a data scientist? And I should probably find her exact quote, but basically she said the worst way you can use us is proving what somebody wanted to do was the right way to go. Let me see where data scientists fit into CX, page 205. Let's see if I can find what she said, because she was great. Annie living in London from Canada. Let's see. Anyway, keep asking questions, guys. Thanks to the first two questions we had today. Please do ask them. Let's see, and I'll be answering them as they come in. This is office hours. Ask me anything. So let me know. Here it is. So I ask Annie, what are the things we should never say to you as a data scientist? Or what are the ways we should not try to collaborate with you? What are some don'ts? And Annie says, the wrong thing to do is to tell the data scientist the answer you want and say, find the data to support my conclusions or assumptions. That's very unscientific in general, but it happens a lot of the time. So there you go, from a data scientist. Hello. Our good friend, and I'm sorry, I'm going to pronounce your name wrong, but you are my good friend, Manikandan, says, let's face it, there are situations where we don't get access to actual customers who are really valued for their time. Companies aren't patient enough to do user research and want to move fast. They're genuine practical situations. What are the next best alternatives? I have a page about that in my book as well, but since it's going to be hard to find in the paper one, give me a moment to open my Kindle version in Microsoft Word, and that way I can search more easily. You can do this in Kindle, of course. I'm just going to open up Word, and you guys can't see my screen. So this is who can we ask instead? So what can I search for that will, what did I write there? Let's see if I can think of something I wrote there and find that section, because I do have a number of suggestions. Let's see. I am not finding it. Let me see. I do have an answer to that, but I want to read you the answer from my book because I know that it's more complete than what I could stab at right now. I might have to stab at it right now. Oh, hold on. I think I found it. I found it. Wah, 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 wah. Okay. So for those of you who have, okay, I don't even know what Kindle location this is. What do you guys have? So the question, of course, is sometimes we're not allowed to speak to real users. They're either the types of users who aren't going to give us their time, or there's other blockers in the company. What can we do instead? Now, obviously, the number one thing we want to do is speak to real users. Sometimes these people don't end up being the customers of your company. If you need doctors, can you find any doctors? Could you go to userinterviews.com and tell them you need 10 doctors? And of course, you're going to pay for that. You know, they recommend that you pay $200, $300 for X amount of time to talk to a doctor because of the value of their time, though really everyone's time has value. But you can't just give them a $20 Amazon gift card when you're thinking about those people who value their time in a certain way. So you can try to go to userinterviews.com. They don't pay me to say that, not sponsored, just a suggestion. If you're looking for doctors. So thing one, does it have to be current customers or can it be anybody who matches your personas? Because if it can be anybody who matches your personas, you have a larger pond in which you can swim. But when you're really blocked, what are the alternatives? So here's what my book says. And you can search this if you have the Kindle version, search unable to speak to real customers. If you're in Kindle, that will bring you right to that section. If you are not in Kindle, I don't have a good sense where in the book this is. So here are some of the things that I suggest. Number one, speak to customer service reps. That's one thing that I do a lot on projects. Sometimes even if I can speak to customers, I'll speak to the customer service representatives because they speak to a huge amount of customers all day long, different types of customers, and they've usually noticed patterns. Now, again, that's their interpretation of data. So we have to remember we are getting it through their lenses or biases, but we could get some good data from customer support. I have gone to call centers and I have sat and listened for a day on calls. That was really beautiful and helpful. It was hard to not yell out loud a few times at people, but that was really, really cool and great information. And it was kind of a primary source in that I was hearing the customers express their problems and frustrations, and I got to hear what the rep said to them. So speaking to customer support reps about people's typical problems, pain points, frustrations, things they complain about in the app or system can be a good way to go. There are also sometimes UX or CX people will check app reviews, check customer support tickets rather than calls. So there's lots of things we can check and try to interpret and aggregate and see where people are having problems. Now, this is more for research side. If you're talking about testing, I'll get to that in a moment. My book says speak to sales agents, speak to account and relationships managers. Those people not only deal with a lot of real and potential customers, but they typically learn what made people go with our company and what made people choose a competitor. Speak with any of your coworkers who direct connect with customers. So I have found that, let's say your target audience is doctors, geologists, whatever, and you're not allowed to talk to them, but there's usually someone at your company who is. There might be an engineer, there might be an account representative, there might be an agent of some sort who can talk to them. Can you partner with that person to get a little bit closer to that customer? Maybe they ask some questions and you listen in, or you're allowed to ask the questions and they're listening in because it's their relationship and you work on the questions ahead of time so there aren't surprises. There might be an avenue there. Using the paid panel like userinterviews.com, that just may be somebody you need to do research with, or it may be a panel of people that you're going to need to pay to do your testing. And then for more passive looks at our customers, I recommend Hotjar, which is really cheap, Full Story, which is kind of medium priced, and 4C, which is pretty darn expensive from what I understand. And these allow us, these are more passive looks. You know, they let us install scripts on our website and we can then watch silent visits to our sites and systems and see what people are doing. And even though we can't hear them and they're not specifically complaining to us, even just watching these, I can usually find some problems in a system. Now, when you're talking about testing, when you're saying, now I want to test, but we've got doctors, financial advisors, surgeons, we want to test our device, our interface, our experience with these people, we're never going to get them. Their time's too important. That's tough. We have to try to find the closest analogs possible, or we have to be willing to pay these people what they want to be paid for their time. Their time does exist and their time could be available. And some of these people are a little bit inspired by knowing that they're going to be involved in making your product better. While I answer this question, remember this is office hours. Ask me anything. So definitely ask your questions. After this answer, I'm going to circle back to Udit, but continue asking questions and I'll pick them up as I go. So for testing, I have to find the closest analog I can, or I have to convince my money that you're going to have to pay a doctor $300 for an hour, or who knows, $300 for a half hour for me to be able to run this test with that person. And I think that before we say it's impossible or it can't be done, we just have to be a little bit more creative and find that it can be done, but it might be a little harder to find those people. It might take a little bit more time and it might add to the budget. But again, and I always talk about this in my books and my talks, if portfolio, project, product, we're talking to UX way ahead of time, then I'd be able to say, hey, before you drop that budget, project manager, At some point I'm going to want to do research with doctors, nurses, surgeons. And at some point I'm going to want to do some testing with doctors, nurses, surgeons, because we don't want to release this and then find out this is crap for these people. Maybe this is really important. Maybe this is life and death. Maybe this is safety, health, compliance. So I want to make sure we test this with people before it gets built. So please budget for that time. And here's what I think we're going to have to pay these people to get them involved in some sort of testing because of how they value their time. I'm going to need $10,000 just to talk to these people because of what they'll want to be paid for their expert hour. And that's how we have to treat it. If they were going into court to testify as an expert witness, somebody would pay them for that time. So we have to budget for it. But if you haven't budgeted for it ahead of time and you haven't spoken to product or project, when we want that later on, of course it's a no. That's a budget line that nobody saw coming. But I think if we can make the case for that much earlier and get involved in that conversation, then it's not a surprise later. Then we have the solution. We've talked about the solutions, or we've told people we can spend $10,000 on this, or you can go find me X doctors, nurses, and surgeons who are our customers, happy or unhappy, who are willing to talk to me. So I think that's the approach that I would take. Please tell me the right way to pronounce your name and if you have a follow-up question. Back to Udit. How would we compare among ABC? Will there be any statistical significant difference quantitatively required to compare the result? So I would have to say when I'm doing that sort of ABC testing in UX, not out live to our live product, when I am doing an ABC sort of comparison, like which of these designs, executions, processes is going to be best for our customer, I do not go by quantitative because I find that if we just go by quantitative, it depends what your quantity is. If you go by people liked this one, people said they liked this one. If you say to people, which one did you like the best? Oh, they liked this one. I don't ask people that because to me, that's quantitative. That can easily end up garbage. I might look at quantitative like, how much time did it take for people to do that task? Wow, it seemed like this one was faster. And a good way to test that would be to show them in different orders to people. If everybody always sees A first, then A clues them in on how to do this, and they use that knowledge and intelligence for B and C. If you really want to do this right, then you're testing with a bunch of people, and maybe you're testing with 10 people. 3 saw A first, 3 saw B first, and 4 saw C first. And that way, they're not using that knowledge for other ones. And you can also notice, do people tend to just like the first thing they saw? Because that could be something you'll notice as well, that sometimes people see something first and wow, I just really like that first one. Or maybe they always loved, no matter what they saw first, they loved the last one the best. You really have to watch these things carefully, look for biases, look for where you're asking people to assess themselves, and you have to assess them based on things that you can measure if you want quantitative. How long did it take them? Was it first, second, or third? And did that seem to matter? Now you've got to really know a few things about statistics and such analyses. So it could be time spent on the task. It could be number of mistakes made, or number of times they had to back out or would have run into an error if your prototype had errors. Number of times they paused because they were confused, frustrated. So there are lots of ways to come up with measurable quantitative things, but very often I would have to say in this type of test, I'm just looking more at the results in a more qualitative way. So, okay, people went through this process and just here's the one that seemed to go the best for them. This one seemed the shortest, it seemed the easiest, it seemed to have the fewest failures. But of course, if you're working in a place that really wants to see good statistical analysis of the user research testing, which again, you can and should do, I tend to be a little bit more informal in some of my reporting, depending upon who I'm working for. I can get super statistical or I can get a little more informal. Um, then there are always things that you can measure if you want to show quant, but just make sure you've decided those things up front. We are going to time how long it takes them to complete this task, even though they're going slow and thinking out loud, as many testers do. We're going to test how many mistakes they made. We're going to test how many times they stopped and seemed to be confused, because they're not going to say, well, now I'm going to stop because I'm confused. And then you mark that down. You're just going to watch them and they're going to go, okay, what do I do now? mark that down as they had to pause because they were confused. So there are definitely ways to measure these things. Welcome to Office Hours and Ask Me Anything. We've got 14 people on LinkedIn and 2 people on YouTube. So this is just Office Hours, Ask Me Anything. As you can see, if you've been joining in, I'm taking absolutely any question about CX or UX. It could be about your job, your resume, your portfolio, how you approach a process, how you solve a problem, presentation skills, soft skills, understanding agile. I will field absolutely any question everybody wants. We've been going about a half hour. I was going to try to keep these a half hour. So let me give you one last chance to add questions or add a follow-up question. Otherwise, we'll wind down for now. Mark your calendars that from now on, these will happen Tuesdays, once a day. I won't do another one today. We'll shift this to Tuesdays, where Tuesday isn't a holiday and where I'm not traveling and the usual stuff. Thank you to Udit for asking the question, and to the others who asked the questions. If you have any other questions, let's get them. Otherwise, I will close down for the day and just be thankful that my dog's a little bit quiet right now. Last chance for questions. This is Office Hours, Ask Me Anything, but it is over when people stop asking me questions. So, any questions? I'll give you about 30 seconds because I know there's a delay. And if I don't see anybody, everybody have a great end of your week, as promised. She is a wonderful dog and she's normally very quiet, but obviously when there's hunters and hunting dogs on the neighbor's property and right across the street, it's bad. Alexis says portfolios. Alexis, I'm going to need more than that. Also, Alexis, I just did a long video on portfolios. Are there examples of really great portfolios? There are, but I am in the process of getting permission from the ones I've seen to share them with you. So I hope to be doing a live stream podcast in January with the best portfolio I've seen so far. Now, it wouldn't be a podcast with the portfolio. Maybe it would be with the guy whose portfolio it was, but I don't want to share that publicly while I don't have his permission. He said, like, yeah, okay, but give me some time to add a little bit more to it. So what I'd like to do is try to get him on as a guest in January so people can meet him, get to know him, and I'm going to walk through his portfolio and what I liked or didn't. I think he's fixing the things I didn't like, so I'll tell people what I really liked about it and why to me it is the greatest portfolio. But Alexis, I've got both a Medium article and a YouTube video that I shot recently about portfolios, so you can track that down. You can go to the Delta CX Medium publication. You can also go to Delta CX on YouTube. That's a channel. So just search YouTube for Delta CX. 2 words, and you should be able to find the video. And it says something like, do you want a portfolio review? Watch this before you get a portfolio review. But Alexis, quickly, the 2 main problems I see in portfolios fall into 2 giant buckets. And then there's a lot of specifics within them, but just to be general, I see problems with your process. Now, I'm not talking you personally. I don't know you, but I see problems with people's process where they didn't really do UX well, correctly, thoroughly. They didn't follow the right process. They made up a process. They were taught by a trade school kind of a wrong process. So thing one is where I tend to find problems in a portfolio is the process. Now, right there, I might decide not to interview you. I might say, uh-oh, I've got a junior entry level job. I want to know this person can come in and hit the ground running. So even though knowing they're a junior, I want to see great process, approach, understanding of UX, and low ego, no ego, getting out of the way to focus on users and customers. I see that very rarely. I see way too many portfolio projects that were very, here's what I would have liked, or we didn't ask any customer stuff, but here's a journey map we made. Boo, not interviewing you. So thing one, process problems. Thing two, storytelling problems. If you had a good process, but you don't tell the story well about it, I still don't know how good you are. So if you are hoping to impress a UX veteran or expert, someone who's been doing it a while, you can't just put up pretty pictures and masonry and all kinds of crap and expect us to be like, wow, you're in. That will work at some jobs where people don't understand UX. They look at pretty pictures, they go, wow, that must be UX, hire them. But if you are really trying to impress a more seasoned UX worker, then you're going to need to tell a better story about your process. And remember that storytelling to me uh, is an analog for what are you going to be like giving a presentation at our workplace? Do you know the balance between too little information, too much information, the right amount of information? How do you present what you worked on and make it compelling and thorough and give people an understanding of the process and approach and where things went right or wrong? So I find the storytelling is often off. I get a lot of people going like, I made a thing, I did user research. And then that's it. I don't get any details about it. I don't get to see certain things about it. So that's not going to be enough for me. That might be enough for an artist who's assessing you. It might be enough for a company that doesn't understand UX. But if you think you want to work in UX, you're going to have to show me you can really do it. You can't audition to sing by saying to people, I can sing. So those are the two key problems that I see in portfolios. Those are large buckets. There are many sub problems there. But again, take a look at the YouTube video and the Medium article. Medium article, obviously much shorter. The YouTube video ended up an hour. I took some live questions. So more about portfolios. We've got some live streams planned for January. They're not scheduled yet with exact dates, but we are looking at, I'm going to speak with a fantastic visual designer on design systems. Want to speak with Mr. Fantastic Portfolio about his portfolio and why it is so great. And I think it's a great model, but because it does great with both buckets. He obviously has amazing process, and he obviously knows how to tell that story. We are planning one about imposter syndrome with a psychologist, but we haven't been able to find a date and time for that. It's possible that we might have to do it over his Christmas break, and not everybody will be around to ask questions, but obviously it'll be archived. All of these are archived on YouTube later, and you can always watch them later. So without any other questions, I'll wrap up. Thanks to everybody for joining Office Hours and Ask Me Anything. I will be back on Tuesday, since we're going to move these to Tuesdays, 4:30 p.m. Central Europe time. Do the math, and I'll keep you posted. But thanks. Yeah, follow me on LinkedIn to be made aware when I am live, and subscribe to the Delta CX channel on YouTube, which will also help you be aware when we're live and as well as when these videos are archived. So thanks to everybody, and I'm going to wind down now and catch